You mentioned earlier that there were 10 things, give or take, that you are interested in about or worried about marijuana policy. You don't have to go through all 10, but could you give me the top? Can we end with the top 3?
So number 1 is the growth in heavy use and the fraction of those folks who have a cannabis use disorder. Number 2 would be impact on educational attainment. It's particularly an issue with middle school and high school kids. And it's true the level of use among teenagers has not gone up noticeably over the last few years. I'm not sure that'll be stable under full legalization. But it's stable at a level that, from the perspective, again, of 1970 is extremely scary. 1970, the median age at first use of cannabis was 19. People graduated from high school, went either into the workforce or into college, and that's where they encountered cannabis. By the mid-80s, median age at first use had gone to 15 or 16. So we're talking about late middle school, early high school. And that situation's not improving at all. I'm not cheerful about that, and I'm really not cheerful about it if we get a big commercial market that pushes it. One thing that's among the secondary impacts of legalization that we haven't seen yet, but will see, is that the cannabis industry, as it becomes legal, gets to be a revenue source in the mass media. And so that the editorial content, the news content of coverage is likely to shift.
You open the New York Times and there'll be an ad for...
Well, but it's not the ad that's doing the work. You open the New York Times, there's going to be an ad for cannabis, and the management of the New York Times is going to hear from its advertisers if it runs anti-cannabis editorial material. If there's a new report on health risks from cannabis and it goes on the front page, they're going to be getting phone calls. Tom Schelling pointed out a long time ago that of all the American mass media publications, the first one to draw attention to the health risks of smoking was the Reader's Digest.
Right.
Because it was subscriber supported, not advertiser supported.
Interesting.
So the impact on media coverage of cannabis from legalization and marketing expenditure, I think, is something pretty seriously worrisome. The other thing to worry about is combinations with nicotine, with alcohol. I had hoped, I would have pretty strongly predicted that since there are alternative intoxicants and alternative ways to use time, that cannabis would be a substitute for alcohol. And so I thought that was the strongest argument for legalizing cannabis, other than the fact that prohibition doesn't work, which is if we could switch 10% of our heavy drinkers to heavy cannabis smoking, we'd be way ahead of the game. So far, no evidence of substitution for alcohol, though, again, there is for the opiates. But we ought to think about policies. So if I wanted to make a stone driving law, I'd have a serious penalty for driving with cannabis and alcohol on board together.
And that's not an uncommon synergy.
No, unfortunately, cannabis is now heavily involved in polydrug consumption. And I jokingly suggested to the Washington Liquor Board that it was going to be hard to get the cannabis stores to advertise about the risks of cannabis. And of course, very hard to get the alcohol stores to advertise about the risks of alcohol. But since they regulated both industries, they had to encourage the alcohol guys to badmouth pot and the pot guys to badmouth booze. And
then they'll both badmouth you.
Exactly. But it didn't go.